Hey everybody, welcome to another AOL Weird News. I'm Barry Weintraub. With me this week, as always, Buck Wolf, our senior editor, and a special guest today, author and pop culture historian, Chris Epting. How are you, Chris? Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me here.
This is a great story today, and it's a story you wrote for AOL, so I'm going to let you describe what we're going to talk about today.
You should know, before we get started with Chris, is that he is a pop culture historian, and his contributions for AOL News involve finding all sorts of things, and he found the most amazing thing for us, really.
Well, I mean, being this kind of pop culture detective, this was a thrill for me. As a Todd Rundgren fan, to actually locate the gentleman that has one of the most vaunted stage props in rock and roll history. In the mid-1970s, Todd Rundgren and his band Utopia mounted a huge tour around the United States, and the centerpiece of it was a pyramid and a sphinx behind it. It was really one of the first incredible rock and roll showpieces that had happened, you know, predating Pink Floyd's The Wall or Animals, or it was the same year the Rolling Stones' Big Lotus stage opened up. So it was really the era of big rock and roll
This is a pyramid that's 26 feet tall, the
Visible
size of a
here.
house. And he climbed up it famously.
Every night, playing guitar, an ankh-shaped guitar, the Egyptian sign of life. He'd make it to the top of the pyramid and then tumble off of it. In the days before you had guys spotting him or any kinds of, I can't imagine the insurance on a tour like that.
And you think of all the performers who have fallen off stage, all the injuries that have happened in rock and roll. This is like one of the most daring things you see.
This was an unbelievably groundbreaking piece of equipment on a rock and roll stage. Why are we talking about it now?
Well, incredibly, the pyramid still exists. Todd Rundgren has a friend who we're going to meet in a moment. And this gentleman, aside from being a big Todd Rundgren fan himself, he and Todd became friends after working together on some things we'll hear about. And then the pyramid had been stored up in a warehouse in Woodstock, New York, and when it came time to find an owner, the gentleman we're going to meet is the man who assumed the ownership of this pyramid and put it up in his backyard.
Dan Harple, who's joining us via Skype, which in and of itself is a special story because Dan is a real-time computer networking pioneer and did much of the work that really helped make Skype possible. And that's for a completely different interview at a completely different time. But let's say hi to Dan.
Hi, guys.
Dan, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for making this interview possible for all your with all your research.
You must have had some vision years ago that this was all going to come together. Now, you were working with Todd Rundgren years ago because Todd was not only a rock and roll pioneer, but a computer music video pioneer, and you developed a friendship. Describe to us how you wound up getting this great iconic piece of stage set and how you moved it.
I met Todd back in '96. Basically with some intellectual interest, and the fact that I was a fan, you know, that was kind of a sidebar thing for me. But we met and we worked on some projects. I assisted Todd with his concept of Patronet. What happened was, I mean, it was completely circuitous. And one day I got a call, and they had a bunch of stuff stored in a barn, and it had been suggested that I might be interested in the pyramid. We agreed I would just take the pyramid piece and not the stage underneath it, so just the pyramid. And then the logistics involved, I think we had 3 or 4 guys move the thing down. It was about a 2-day project.
Then when you had the pyramid erected on your property, you didn't just put it up. You put a lot of thought into how it was going to sit.
This is a field that you can see from Google Earth. You actually etched in Egyptian lettering into your yard.
To me, it was a very symbolic thing that was designed to be this stark sculpture out in a field with nature. What I did is I thought about how it would look from space. So I got out the old trusty John Deere tractor and I carved out what was my version of an Egyptian hieroglyph.
Just randomly, you just got in the thing and drove until you said that looks just about right?
No, I sketched it on some graph paper and stuff. You know, I kind of figured out what I wanted. And then additionally, I did some research on the actual Great Pyramid, on how it was oriented. My view was, well, let's just replicate that orientation. So I went out and I got a handheld GPS to be very accurate, did a bunch of staking out there as if I were like a civil engineer. The pyramid is basically aligned theoretically the way the Great Pyramid is.
Dan, the plan is to leave it there as long as can be? And
I've got 5 kids, and you know they lived through this whole thing as my wife did, so it's really kind of the fabric of our family and our friends and neighbors now, really.
And what's the rule about the kids playing on the pyramid?
Well, we're pretty laissez-faire parents, you know. Kids don't actually go up there and just willy-nilly climb it. I think I've always just said to friends and family, if you want to climb it, do it. But I think you need to go all the way to the top and then you need to turn around and face outward the way Todd did when he would wail on his Egyptian ankh-shaped guitar.
Well, Dan, we can't thank you enough. I mean, your story beyond this pyramid is fascinating, and maybe some other time we could get into that. But folks should Google you and find out more about you. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for being with us on Skype, which, of course, you helped to make possible.
Thanks for the invitation, you guys. I enjoyed it.
All right, well, that was Dan Harple, and now let's actually talk with Todd Rundgren, who has been the subject of this discussion.
Joining us from Hawaii.
Via Skype, once again.
Via Skype.
Aloha.
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 And thanks for getting up early, Todd. And Chris, you were the one who did the research. Fire away with your first question.
Take us back to 1976 or so, the first sense of the idea. I mean, I know it was sort of something you wanted to do to go along with the Raw album, but talk to a little bit about what the inspiration was of the pyramid set, the full stage set for the Raw tour.
I had a fairly, at one point, I had a fairly large version of Utopia, and we weren't playing the kinds of venues where we could put up big sets and things like that. We pretty much filled the stage just with players and instruments. Eventually, Utopia stripped down to a 4-piece band. And since the band was making something of a reintroduction, we thought, let's have a grand concept. So we thought this Egyptian thing, there's some great imagery to go with it. There's a whole costuming thing that we could undertake as well.
In the scope of it, it's such an immense thing. What did people say when you developed the concept? Because it couldn't have been cheap, and it wasn't easy to lug around from venue to venue.
Well, fortunately, in those days, there was this thing called tour support from record labels.
Any memory on the kind of money that was involved in that, in actually putting that together?
Well, I have to say I never paid any attention to those things in those days. They would just kind of, the money would be there.
How did you know that you had the athleticism to climb up this 26-foot tall pyramid playing a guitar that's not wireless, but that's trailing a wire, because it was before the age of wireless?
The most dangerous aspect about that whole trick, it was not the flip off the top of the pyramid. It was actually walking to the top of the pyramid. Before I ever did the flip, one of our road crew said, well, you better not do this first. Let me try it. I don't know. He had the sling that goes on your hand, and then you have to do a somersault off. And he thought, well, he was a big burly guy. He'd be able to try it. And he left too much slack in, and he fell right through the sling and right onto the drum kit.
Whoa.
That was the first time anybody did the trick. So I only did it about maybe 2 times in rehearsal before we took it out on the road, because I figured if I'm going to have a horrible accident, I don't want it to happen in rehearsal and just waste the whole thing. So,
how many times did you end up climbing that thing and jumping off?
50 times. I don't know.
So next time you make it up to Massachusetts, to Dan's place, are you going to climb it again?
I'm a somewhat more circumspect person now. I certainly wouldn't attempt to do it playing the guitar. I might be able to get up and down without hurting myself.
People are dying to know, what are you working on now? What's the latest projects from Todd Rundgren?
Since this year started, since January, I've done a rock and roll camp in Sacramento, California. And then after that, I'll be going out and touring the 2 albums that I recreated last year, which were Todd and A Wizard of True Star. We're just doing a brief run of 5 dates. I guess there's something else, but I probably don't remember it.
Todd Rundgren, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks, Todd.
Cheers.
That was Todd Rundgren. Now, you have climbed this pyramid.
Yeah, and I have to say that there are many times in a marriage, I've been married 2.5 years, where your wife does something incredibly better than you. And you have to realize that, well, sometimes, not only am I not a rock star, but in my house I realize that it's my wife who's the rock star. Because she made it up, and I didn't.
I'm looking forward to watching the video of you climbing this thing. Chris Epting, author of more books than I could count, all on pop culture history, or as you like to call Chris,
a pop culture detective, the man who found where Elvis Presley played touch football, or the exact spot that James Dean died.
And those are just 2 out of thousands.
Yeah, if you're looking for Madonna's bra, Chris will find it.
I'm your guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure that makes your wife very happy. Well, for Chris Epting and Buck Wolf, I am Barry Weintraub, and we thank you for clicking on what has been a really terrific episode of AOL Weird News.